Sup, bitches. So, literally, right after scripting this video, I got some sort of a cold. I'm fine, don't worry. I just wanted to let you know that the majority of the video is gonna have this voice playing. It's annoying as fuck, I know, but like, girly pop's got a post dot in December, and my voice sounds like ass right now. Anyways, happy holidays you, ho ho ho's and bitches, and enjoy this long as hell video about a contest I joined. In November, I joined TrueGreen7's Pokemon Evolution Contest, where we had to design evolved evolutions for 2 of his pre-evolved forms with no information before the video. I wanted to wait until the video was uploaded to talk about how I stood in comparison, and I unfortunately didn't make it into the top 100, which, in retrospect, is fine, and honestly, I can see now why I didn't cut. I'd like to mention before we begin that I have no hate for Ron TrueGreen7 whatsoever. I think the final choices he picked fit the bill and are genuinely beautiful. Fakémon. I highly recommend going to his channel and watching the video and subscribing to him if you'd like to see similar content, along with supporting all of the other artists shown in the video, as they all deserve the same if not more support for putting all their effort into such wonderful pieces. I, however, am a creative individual who demands my work be shared with the world. So here, my beloved viewers, are all of the Pokemon I designed for the contest, and 2 surprise features at the end of the video. Bluffin'. Watching the video giving more context, I can see why I didn't win. The inspiration given wasn't as anglerfish or eel based as I had initially thought, but instead was based on the Thresher Shark Witch (BTW) I did use as inspiration, just not in the way that it was initially intended, but I still used ID, and also, red herrings. I got that vibe already, but I guess my design went too hard on trying to expand on the tail and not expand on the actual fish part. Veilmicos. When I initially looked at the Pokemon, my instinctual thought was, wow, the tail looks like a monster from a Greek vase, some examples being Heracles fighting the Katos and the monster of Troy vases. So for the final evolution, Veilmicos, which originates from Vengir, eel, and Mimikos. Vengir is the old French origin of the word vengeance, eel, since the creature in question is based on an eel, although more specifically the eel referenced is the pelican eel with mixed aspects from the dragon moray eel and the marine betta grouper fish, and Mimikos being the Greek origin for the word mimic. The immediate inspiration was the original monster of the depths,
Scylla.
There are many iterations of the tale that formed Scylla, as she was mentioned in Homer's Odyssey, Book 3 of Virgil's Aeneid, Ovid's Metamorphoses, and the myths of Eustathius. However, there are commonalities to her story that I will summarize here. Scylla was once a gorgeous naiad who had claimed the attention of Poseidon, who was married to the goddess Amphitrite, who was furious at her husband's infidelity, and ergo poisoned the spring where Scylla would bathe, turning her into a horrifying man-eating monster that Poseidon feared. I'm using this version of the myth by John Tietz's. However, there is a version by Hygnius where it's the sea god Glacius who falls in love with Scylla, who isn't interested in him whatsoever, and he goes to Circe, but then she falls in love with him, but he isn't interested in her, so she says, well, 2 can play that game, and does the same thing as Amphitrite. Any whoosies. And from there I ran, and so I wrote.
Long ago, the pre-evolution of Veilmicos was once a common Pokemon in the land it once roamed. It was highly favored for its tail, a commodity to the trainers. That was, until it began to be hunted down for the thing that brought it favor. The tails were used as masks and meals for festivals that celebrated the Pokemon. But soon, the population began to dwindle, bit by bit. The Pokemon's main defense was taken out by the greedy humans that proclaimed they loved it. And so Veilmicos was born, out of the hatred it had against all who feasted upon it. The region of its origin no longer exists, was supposed to be sunken by Veilmicos eons ago. It was sworn to never be evolved again, and now its pre-evolved form is highly feared by all who know it.
A lot of Vielmiko's lore draws from a couple of occurrences in real life. For example, it was highly favored for its tail, a commodity to the trainers. The tails were used as masks and meals for festivals that celebrated the Pokémon. A surprising fact: the reason thresher sharks are an endangered species is because they are commonly used for vitamins and cosmetic products, leather production, and shark fin soup. I imagine the pre-evolved form for Vielmikos during these hunting periods essentially had their tails cut off before being thrown back into open waters to be hunted down, as stated in, but soon, the population began to dwindle. Bit by bit, the Pokémon's main defense was taken out by the greedy humans that proclaimed they loved it, which in part is a reference to Epic the Musical, as instead of the Odyssey, where Odysseus simply ties himself to the boat to listen to the sirens, Odysseus plugs his ears with beeswax, capturing all of the sirens after gaining the information from them, only to cut their tails off and let them drown. But it is also a reference to how in the late 1960s to the early 1970s, when orcas were being hunted to sell to SeaWorld and other marine parks, some of the orcas wouldn't make it, so they'd cut open the dead orcas and stuff them with rocks to sink their bodies. Now, while the latter story is mostly based on stories similar to the sinking of Atlantis or the usual tale of man's hubris, it is inspired by a theory that the recent rise in orca attacks was spawned by aforementioned whale hunting. Otherwise, Vielmikos takes a lot of inspiration also from the Reaper Leviathan of Subnautica, mostly for its aggressive tendencies and size. Now that we're past the inspirational round, we can talk more properly about Vielmikos itself. Vielmikos is 55 meters and 180 feet long, weighing at around 360,000 pounds. Vielmikos, like most legendary Pokémon, is one of a kind, being said to be made of the pure anger and fear of all of its pre-evolutions. Vielmikos remains at the deepest level of the ocean and hasn't come up since, making most believe that the Pokémon is simply a myth. However, the legend had become so ingrained that the hunting of its pre-evolved form became illegal in almost every region, out of the fear it would evolve into Vielmikos once more. Vielmikos is completely blind, the only thing making it capable of sensing prey being its intense sense of smell and echolocation. Its four heads remain asleep for most of the day, only waking when they smell large groups of other deep-sea water-type Pokémon. However, this also makes it just as, if not more aggressive, if it smells any human life form within its area. Vielmikos will become incredibly hostile. Vielmikos' heads all have long prehensile tongues that may be thin but have an incredibly strong grip. They also have large teeth that are practically fused into its jaw so that it's incapable of breaking from its mouth unless its head is ripped open. Currently, no knowledge is known of what a Vielmikos sounds like, but some say that its voice screams of pain and agony, endlessly searching for someone to take its misery of knowing how it came to be. The next and last line was possibly one of the hardest to complete, since when I started, the Pokémon seemed to take aspects from many different animals. Inevitably, I decided to play stupid games and win stupid prizes. So basically, I based each evolution on the different types of marsupials. The gist of the information is that marsupials are divided into 4 niches. These are the burrowing species such as wombats, Tasmanian devils, burrowing rat kangaroos, and numbats, terrestrial species such as kangaroos, bandicoots, crest-tailed marsupial rat brown four-eyed opossums, and wallabies, semi-aquatic species the water opossum or yapik being currently the only known one, and the arboreal species which include tree kangaroos, koalas, sugar gliders, and some cuscus. Blank. In the video, Ron states that this Fakémon is based on the Tasmanian tiger, which does still lean into my marsupial theory, as Tasmanian tigers are or were carnivorous marsupials. But to be fair, the multiple designs, which vary extremely from the original design not being chosen, make sense. I just thought the multiple marsupial variations were more interesting than simply using one inspiration, but that may just be the evolution's supremacist in me. Burrow Joe. Burrow Joe is based on a juvenile common wombat. The common wombat known as the bare-nosed wombat is sturdy and built close to the ground, has small eyes and ears, strong legs with long claws, and thick, coarse fur that ranges from light brown to gray and black. all of which is represented in Burrow Joe, which originates from Burrow and Joey, who is sturdy and built close to the ground, standing at about 391.4 centimeters, averaging at 36 pounds, has small eyes and ears, strong legs with long claws which, just like real wombats, are also flattened for the proper digging tools, with a double claw intended for grooming, and thick coarse fur that ranges from light brown to gray. However, this is also a reference to the dirt that wombats prefer. Wombats tend to roam in Southeast Australia in areas such as woodlands, coastlands, mountain forests, and shrublands. The soil is very well drained, which makes it easier for them to dig in. The two types of soils referenced are ferrosols and hydrosols. Ferrosols are red or yellow-brown, well-drained soils with a clay loam to clay texture, while hydrosols are typically gray or greenish-gray in color. They can be seasonally or permanently wet, and some are permanently submerged. Ergo, while Burrow Joe's main form is a yellowish-brown with hints of lighter grays and browns, the shiny form is gray with hints of greenish-gray. Kikajo. Kikajo is based on sprouting vines and a juvenile red kangaroo. Kikajo, which is made up of Kik, and Joey, yeah, no, that was obvious, bitch, is based around the idea of a child who aspires to fight, the usual protagonist child, you could say. This is a reference to how, in real life, kangaroo will fight for a variety of reasons. Yes, even female kangaroos will fight other male kangaroos. Both sexes will fight for drinking spots, but long, ritualized fighting or boxing is largely done by males. The sprout aspect was also added to symbolize the new beginnings of the young Pokemon, but also as a reference to one part of a red kangaroo's anatomy. As Wikipedia describes, the red kangaroo's legs work much like a rubber band, with the Achilles tendon stretching as the animal comes down, then releasing its energy to propel the animal up and forward. The vines on a Kikajo, as opposed to holding them back, are rubbery. They help propel the Kikajo forward, and even when they feel threatened, they will detach from themselves to make the Kikajo look bigger. Kikajo stands at 3 feet and 8 inches 111.76 centimeters, averaging at around 33.1 pounds. Marine Joe. Marine Joe and its evolution, Predo-Possum, are both the most extremely interesting Pokemon I think I've ever designed. They are both based on the Yapik, also known as the water opossum. For context, Yapik is the only currently known semi-aquatic marsupial. They are mostly found in freshwater streams and rivers through Mexico, Central and South America, and Argentina. They are also the only currently known marsupial for both sexes to have pouches, although the females use theirs to hold their babies in a watertight pouch while the males hold their genitals. This is actually proven useful because their genitals could get caught in plants and help to reduce drag. They also have water-resistant fur, webbed hands or feet, and long tails that assist in reducing drag. Marine Joe, made up of Marine plus Joey, was slightly difficult to plan out. While sightings of Yapik seem not to be rare, it does seem a bit difficult to find pictures of Joey or even juvenile Yapik, so the design is based on mostly traits found in the adult Yapik, such as its water-resistant coat, long tails, and webbed feet. However, along with the feet, I added webbed ears and wave-like patterns to the Marine Joe, along with mostly monochromatic coloring. This is due to their environment being mostly in rocky streams and freshwater lakes, so they'd more easily blend in alongside the rocks that lay upon the surface. Marine Joe stands at about 2 feet 3 inches 68 centimeters and average at 2- 4 pounds. Glide Joe. Glide Joe mostly takes inspiration from the Joey of a sugar glider. The sugar glider is one of the volplane gliding possums in Australia, nocturnal marsupial with a squirrel-like body, a long prehensile tail, and thick, soft blue-grayish fur. They also have 5 digits and an opposable thumb on their hind feet, although most of their fingers are clawless. They have one elongated and sharp finger on their forefoot that they use to extract insects from bark. Their wings are made up of a gliding membrane that stretches from the outside of their 5th digit of each forefoot to the 1st digit of each hindfoot. Glide Joe, made up of Glide and Joey, is based off of a sugar glider Joey, which is pretty similar to an adult sugar glider, so there wasn't much of a distinction to make when designing them. One of the points of inspiration, however, was partially based around the book character Stellaluna. Although not being a sugar glider, specifically being a young fruit bat, Stellaluna as a character is a variation on the term a fish out of water story, although in that case it'd be more like a bat in a bird's nest. In the beginning, Numblank has to adjust to being in a tree, as before they evolve into Glide Joe, they aren't entirely prepared to face the open world. Usually, in this case, The Sparrowlighter, their parent, will stay close to them at all times until they are ready to evolve into Glidejo. Afterward, Glidejo will learn everything that its mother has become adjusted to, which they are very afraid of, and will tend to hide in their nests if they so much as fail. Thankfully, most, if not all, Sparrowlighters are extremely forgiving of their baby's shortcomings. Glidejo stands at 2 feet 8 inches 81 centimeters and average at about 30 pounds. Dig Gear Bat. Now, while Burrojo and Dig Gear Bat are both heavily based on the wombat, Burrojo is based on a juvenile common wombat, and Dig Gear Bat, which originates from Dig, Gear, and Wombat, is based on a northern hairy-nosed wombat. Why was the decision made to change the initial inspiration from a common wombat to a northern hairy-nosed wombat? Well, to begin, much like all other species of wombat, the northern hairy-nosed wombat is heavily built, with large heads, short, powerful legs, and of course, claws for digging. However, unlike the average wombat, the northern hairy-nosed wombat has strictly gray fur. They also have longer and pointier ears, silkier fur, a broader nose, and very poor eyesight. Ergo, the need for a longer nose is to help them look for food in the dark. They also tend to burrow under the native Bauhinia trees, as the tree has a spreading growth form, and its roots probably provide stability for the extensive burrows dug by the wombats. The northern hairy-nosed wombat is also much rarer than the common wombat, as they are currently critically endangered due to the threat of wild dogs and threats such as fire, flood, and or disease. Now, the way I used this information to create Dig Gear Bat was simple. The initial clay-textured and coarse fluff turns to a soft, metal-like fur that is still silky smooth but keeps its body shielded. This does take aspects from the common wombat, who has a toughened rear hide since most of the posterior is made of cartilage. However, along with the pointed ears, being mostly made of grays as a reference to how the fur is now steel adjacent and why the shiny is a reddish orange since it's supposed to replicate rusted steel. The title of the excavation Pokémon is also about how all wombats have an impressive tunneling system and have evolved to be able to use their environment to build their home. Dig Gear Bat stands at about 5 feet 150 centimeters and has an overall weight in the range of 169.8 pounds. Kangabrawl. Kikajo and Kangabrawl are both clearly heavily based on the kangaroo. Kikajo is based on sprouting vines and a red kangaroo, while Kangabrawl is based around a Venus flytrap and a red kangaroo. Kangabrawl pretty clearly just made up of kangaroo, and brawl stands at 6 feet 5 inches 195 centimeters and averages around 199 pounds. Kangabrawl evolves when they come into contact with the leaf of a carnivine, as when a Kangabrawl connects itself with nature, it evolves to boost its defense strategies but also its inner balance. As their connection to nature is impenetrable, when they find themselves roaming the desert lands and are in need of cooling, they will use the life force of other plants to keep them cool without the necessity for water. This is actually a reference to how real red kangaroos have a dense network of blood vessels under the surface of their skin that help keep them cool when licked. It is hypothesized that different plants may evolve Kangabrawl into different forms. However, nothing has come of this theory for the moment. Predo-Possum. Predo-Possum made up of predator, opossum, and swim share similar traits to Marinjo and the Yapik. A lot of their traits are a bit more original or based on the camouflaging habits of fish such as the stargazer fish. Predo-Possum are overly protective animals that are afraid mostly of humans and larger fish that will attempt to consume their young. Female Predo-Possum's coats have the ability to match the color of the water that they live in. It's almost impossible to see a female Predo-Possum leave its burrow or the water unless it's fighting alongside its mate. The numblank actually never truly leaves its mother's pouch until it grows bigger than its mother. Afterward, she teaches the Marinjo to swim and hunt before allowing it out into bigger waters to repeat the process. Male Predo-Possums share similar coats to the Marinjo, as they are mostly scavenging very close to or near the burrow if it's safe enough. Although for both Predo-Possum, it's known that once they have babies that they will do all they can to protect their young. If a pair of Predo-Possum lose a child, the pair will soothe each other. They will also mate for life and die together during battle. The part that matches the stargazer fish is that while the stargazer fish has a venomous upper fin, the wave-like fins of a Predo-Possum are non-venomous. But as sharp as their razor-sharp teeth, Predo-Possum stands at about 4 feet and 3 inches 129 centimeters and average at 8 pounds. Sparrowlighter. Glidejo and Sparrowlighter are both inspired off of the sugar glider. However, while Glidejo mostly takes inspiration from the joey of a sugar glider, Spiralighter takes aspects from both an adult sugar glider and an adult southern greater glider. Spiralighter is a very excitable and sweet Pokémon. They are incredibly acrobatic and have extremely coordinated movements and dexterity. So much so that sometimes they will mimic human dancing and acrobatics just to have fun. The majority of Spiralighter, unlike sugar gliders, are female, with the males being only slightly larger and mostly staying at home with the young. Much like real sugar gliders, Spiralighter are extremely social and will bond with neighboring Spiralighter, their Glidejoe's friends, newborn Numblank, and even other Pokémon or teammates. They will do this by wrapping their fluffy membrane around the opposite Pokémon and snuggling their face into the Pokémon. They will do their best to wrap 90% of their body around the other Pokémon, as the inside of their membrane is thick, weighted, and very warm. They also take inspiration from a lot of female superheroes, but specifically Star Sapphire, Atom, Eve, and Starfire, kind of as a nod to how their middle stage pre-evolution was a spin on the fish out of water trope. Spiralighter stands at 4 foot 5 inches 134 centimeters, an average at about 60 pounds. And as an added bonus, here is an evolution line of my version of Numblank. Oh what? You thought I was bluffing about the surprise? You fool. Yeah, that's right. I went through the effort of writing 2 pitches for 2 full-fledged Pokémon games. Well, more specifically, I wrote 2 pitches for sideline or spin-off Pokémon games. Think Pokémon Snap or Pokémon Ranger. Something I've found strange about Pokémon as a franchise is they've delved so deeply into becoming a Pokémon trainer. But I don't think we've ever actually gone into any other Pokémon jobs. Well, other than Pokémon Ranger, Pokémon Snap, and what have you. But you get what I mean. Now, while I do have a lot more detail on the gameplay mechanics and storyline, I'm already crunching for time in this video, so I think for now, I'll attempt a brief summary. Pokémon Project Abyssal. In this game, players assume the role of a newly hired underwater archaeologist and marine biologist working for the company and Pelagian. The story begins with unusual Pokémon sightings near the player's hometown, where strange disturbances in the ocean occur during the night. A pit, initially a trench, begins to open beneath the sea, causing an influx of water-type Pokémon to gather at the shore. As items of unknown origin wash up, the player and their team embark on Project Abyssal, a mission to investigate the mysterious pit and its deep secrets. The player's team consists of Ty Dent, a spiritual oceanographer, Dr. Crystal Elfer, a no-nonsense marine geologist, and MX Hontoon, an eccentric scientist experimenting with bioluminescent Pokémon. The mission takes the player on a series of underwater expeditions, with each week unlocking a new set of submerged regions known as subdivisions. These areas are inhabited by unique and increasingly dangerous Pokémon, each tied to specific themes, such as volcanic zones, bioluminescent ecosystems, eerie ghost-like Pokémon, and submerged relics of a lost civilization. The player and their team explore these subdivisions, solving puzzle-based minigames to gather data, photograph Pokémon, and piece together the mysteries surrounding the pit. As the player discovers more about the regions and their contents, they realize that the disturbances in the ocean might be part of a much larger and more sinister force at work. Each subdivision has different puzzles and minigames inspired by aspects of Subnautica, Submarine Simulator, and/or parts of Lumion Legacy. For example, in the volcanic zone, you'd have to navigate through the seafloor to place devices that would have pressure sensors. However, you would be under a strict timer that would end when the volcanoes begin to erupt. While in the bioluminescent region, you would take pictures of all of the newly found Pokémon. It would be a mixture of features from rhythm games and first-person snap shooters. In the ghostly subdivision, you must identify artifacts using a flashlight and submarine camera. while in the Kelp Forest subdivision, you'd play a whack-a-mole style game where instead of hitting the Pokémon over the head, you've got to snap a picture of each Pokémon every time they pop out of the grass. Each new puzzle and task contributes to a growing collection of research and notes that players can later analyze to uncover patterns in the pit's disturbances. As the weeks progress, the story becomes darker. The team discovers the pit's strange connection to different eras, each subdivision revealing more about an ancient, powerful force Vilmicos that seems to be sealed deep beneath the ocean. Tensions rise within the team as personal relationships fluctuate based on the player's actions, especially when you experience a vivid dream of a utopian world that seems almost too similar to your own, that ends in horrific tragedy, leaving the player with more questions than answers. Positive or negative interactions with teammates impact the player's experience, especially when the team is locked in their headquarters, and a disturbing encounter with the CEO hints at a deeper conspiracy. The final act of the game sees the team thrust into a dangerous and surreal underwater realm. The pit opens wider, and the team, now faced with deteriorating conditions, must work together to explore the now fully open depths. As you and your team discover a series of elaborate, symbolic buildings representing various elemental Pokémon types, they realize that these structures are part of an ancient, possibly catastrophic system designed to keep Vilmicos contained. The game culminates in a dramatic showdown against this powerful entity, and depending on your actions, force the player either to confront the beast alone or with the help of their teammates. Hopefully, later on, I'll be able to make a more in-depth video, but for now, I hope you at least enjoyed the plot description. And now let's head to the final game we're going to talk about today. Pokémon Rescue. This game is a mixed variety of different mechanics, a construction and management game based on games like Planet Zoo, Zoo Tycoon, or Roller Coaster Tycoon, a pet care simulator based on games like Nintendogs, Zoo Tycoon again, or the franchise of Pets games, and an animal rescue games, that is, Animal Shelter, or Wild Kratts games like Wild Kratts World Rescue, Wild Kratts Rescue Run, and Baby Animal Rescue. At the beginning of the game, you're actually introduced as a trainer and given the opportunity to train a newly discovered Pokémon. As you walk, you find yourself at a crossroad, a huge decision that will dictate the rest of your journey. The sign states the path farthest to the left is a dirt path leading to a city entirely paved from mud and soil but begins with a dirt path through a desert. This path will give you a rescue center that focuses on the care of ground, rock, and ice-type Pokémon, along with a companion named Demry, who is sharp of mind and no nonsense. This will also give you Burrow and Diggearbat as Pokémon, and they will be your starter/ace for the rest of the game. The path directly in the left middle leads towards a deep woodland that ends in an open grassland meadow and field with a small village just over it. This path will give you a rescue center that focuses on the care of grass, bug, and electric-type Pokémon, and a companion named Abilene, who is soft-spoken and encouraging. This will also give you Kikajo and Kangabrawl as your starter/ace Pokémon for the rest of the game. The path directly in the right middle leads towards a subtropical forest with large vast streams of fresh water that lead to the lake, with a lakeside town. This path will give you a rescue center that focuses on the care of water, dark, and poison-type Pokémon, along with a companion named Lakin, who is a bit silly and slackish, but can be a dedicated ally when it comes down to it. This will also give you Marinjo and Preto Swim as your starter/ace for the rest of the game. Finally, the path farthest to the right leads towards an inland temperate rainforest that stands near a mountain range with mountain villages standing alongside. This path will give you a rescue center that focuses on the care of flying, fairy, and dragon-type Pokémon. It will also give you a companion named Kahi, an optimistic and dreamy friend to the end, along with Glidejo and Sparelighter as your starter/ace Pokémon for the rest of the game. The rest of the game plays out with you being introduced to your town of choice. Through talking with the non-player characters, you'll deduce that you've given up your previous career as a trainer to become the owner of your own Pokémon sanctuary, and once you arrive at the building lot, you'll be introduced through a skippable tutorial on how to build said sanctuary, and then later on be introduced to the missions mechanic through the introduction of your companion. The missions mechanic includes minor daily tasks that earn you money that will help you expand on the sanctuary, which are essentially simple minigames, such as cleaning both Pokémon and their enclosures, feeding Pokémon, or giving tour guides around the sanctuary. However, after a day or two you'll be introduced to field missions. Field missions are huge open-world missions that will take you and your companion from your current location to either another part of your region, or even to another region entirely to rescue Pokémon. To complete the mission, you must first find the Pokémon, then quickly and carefully retrieve the Pokémon, and finally do a checkup on the Pokémon before taking it back to your sanctuary. Pokémon found during field missions will take a couple of days before being able to be put into enclosures, as you want to allow the Pokémon to rest and relax to their new environment before being put on display. The Pokémon that inhabit your sanctuary will either stay for the duration of the game, as their condition will make them unable to be released back into the wild, or will be released back into the wild after you have properly healed them. Either way, you'll receive money every time you care for your Pokémon, and after every release, you'll be able to take a photo of that Pokémon happy in the wild. While the game doesn't technically have a conclusive end, as you can play the game as many times as you wish, the story's true ending comes when you have fully evolved your starter Pokémon, and they are now able to be released back into the wild, where you, your companion, and your starter will have a no-dialogue cutscene that plays back over all the memories you've shared before releasing your Pokémon back into the wild. In conclusion, this shit was seriously so fun to do. I really may come back to these in the future and actually try designing the characters, expanding a bit on the games more, and maybe do some more long-form videos on what I do with either concept. But honestly, I just made these because I wanted to see what I could do with the characters I made and share them with all of you. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I seriously might burst into happy tears. This video was so fun to make and I'm so happy I got to partake in this competition. I definitely suggest going to Ron's channel and checking out the 100 Pokemon video. And I'd like to especially thank Ron for giving me this opportunity. Even if I didn't win, I'm still so happy I joined and maybe even got him to see my work. I still can't believe I've been doing this for a year. It's been tough, but I'm gonna try to do a lot better next year. Thank you all again, and I wish you all the happiest of New Year's. Later, skaters.